Mr. President.
Yes. Just a second.
We are live on YouTube, Mr. President.
Okay, let's bring the 66 into session for this Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. We now are officially in session. Could we please have a roll call?
Anderson, absent. Baldwin,
Here.
Whitman,
Here.
Boner,
Here.
Bouchard,
Here.
Case,
Present.
Cooper,
Here.
Driscoll,
Here.
Ellis,
Present.
French,
Here.
Murphy,
Here.
Guru,
Here.
Hicks,
Here.
Hutchings,
Here.
James,
Here.
Kinski,
Here.
Kolb,
Here.
Cost,
Here.
Landon,
Here.
McCowan,
Here.
Nethercutt,
Here.
Pappas,
Here.
Perkins,
Here.
Rothfuss,
Here.
Salazar,
Here.
Schuler,
Here.
Scott,
Here.
Steinmetz, Steinmetz,
You're muted.
Wasserberger,
Here.
President Dockstetter.
Here. Prayer by Senator Kinski.
I can't get mine to unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please bow your heads. As we gather here today, we pray to you, Lord, that we shall set aside partisan differences, come together, and ask you for the gift of discernment to do what is best and right for the people in the great state of Wyoming. We also ask your blessings on the soul of our late friend and colleague, Senator Hank Coe. In Jesus Christ's name, we ask all this. Amen.
And will our veteran and Senator McEwen lead us off in the pledge, and everybody join him as we do that.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Senator McEwen, and thank you for your service. Reading correction approval of journal. Will the chief clerk please read the journal committee report?
Mr. President, your journal committee reports that the journal of January 12th, 2021 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Signed, Senator Kolb, Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any objections? There being none, the report is adopted. Under new business, I'd like to note that if we have any spectators in the gallery, the session is being also live streamed in W110. You'll be able to hear and see the Senate virtual session as well if you'd like. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have any additional business?
I do, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move the following named person be placed in nomination as an employee of the Senate. Linda Bailey, Journal Clerk.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Thank you. Motion is passed. Motion has been carried. Any messages from the House?
Yes, Mr. President. House of Representatives, Wyoming State Legislature, message number 6, January 12th, 2021. Mr. President, the House of Representatives 66th Wyoming State Legislature has adjourned by adopting the following motion. Suspending further reading. Sincerely, Wendy Harding.
All right, reports from standing committees. Chief Clerk?
Reports from standing committees. Mr. President, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred Senate File 32, Water Permit Notice Requirements, respectfully reports back same to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Garou, Hicks, Kinsky, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Dated January 19th, 2021, signed Drew Perkins, Chairman. January 19th, Mr. President, your committee number 2, Appropriation, to whom was referred Senate File 35, State Budget Department, respectfully reports the same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Garou, Hicks, Kinsky, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Signed, Drew Perkins, Chairman. January 19th, Mr. President, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred Senate File 63, Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund Reserve Account Distribution Timing. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Garou, Hicks, Kinsky, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Signed, Drew Perkins, Chairman. January 19th, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred Senate File 64, Local Government Distributions Revisions 2, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Senators Garou, Hicks, Kinsky, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Signed, Drew Perkins, Chairman. January 19th, 2021. Mr. President, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom was referred Senate File 45, Monthly Ad Valorem Tax Revisions, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Voting aye, Senators Baldwin, Case, James, Pappas, and Schuler. Signed, Senator Case, Chairman. January 19th, 2021. Mr. President, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom was referred Senate File 60, Monthly Ad Valorem Tax Revisions 2, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Voting aye, Senators Baldwin, Case, James, Pappas, and Schuler. Signed, Cal Case, Chairman. January 19th, Mr. President, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 56, Wyoming Gaming Commission Modifications and Corrections, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendment. Voting aye, Senators Ellis, Garou, Landon, Salazar, and Schuler. Signed, Affy Ellis, Chairman. January 19th, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred Senate File 14, Credit for Reinsurance, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Boner, Case, Driscoll, Nethercott, and Scott. Signed, Driscoll, Chairman. January 19th, 2021. Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred Senate File 16, New Net Metering System, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Voting aye, Senators Boner, Case, Driscoll, Nethercott, and Scott. signed Senator Driscoll, Chairman. January 19th, Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred Senate File 18, Universal Occupational Licensure, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Boner, Driscoll, Nethercott, and Scott. Senator Case, no. Signed, Senator Driscoll, Chairman. January 19th, Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred Senate File 29, Revised Uniform Law on Notarial Acts, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass with the following amendment. Voting aye, Senators Boner, Case, Driscoll, Nethercott, and Scott. Respectfully signed, Senator Driscoll, Chairman. January 20th, 2021. Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 5, Driving Under the Influence Amendments, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Cooper, French, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. Signed, Tara Nethercott, Chairman. January 20th, Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 19, Public Health Emergencies Immunity Amendments, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Voting aye, Senators Cooper, French, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. Signed, Tara Nethercott, Chairman. January 20th, 2021. Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 21, Judicial Review of Agency Actions, Permissible Venues, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Cooper, French, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. Signed, Tara Nethercott, Chairman. January 20th, Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 22, Electronic Court Filings, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass with the following amendment. Voting aye, Senators Cooper, Kolb, Cost, Nethercott, and voting no, Senator French. Signed, Tara Nethercott, Chairman. January 20th, Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 23, Public Meetings, Executive Sessions for Security Plans, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Cooper, French, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. Signed, Tara Nethercott, Chairman. January 20th, Mr. President, your committee 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 41, Tax Lien Enforcement Amendments, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Beitman, Cooper, Rothfuss, and Wasserberger. Absent, Senator Anderson. Signed, Bo Beitman, Acting Chairman. January 20th, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 42, Out-of-State State Bank Charter Conversions, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Beitman, Cooper, Rothfuss, Wasserberger. Absent, Senator Anderson. Signed, Bo Beitman, Acting Chairman. January 20th, Mr. President, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 43, Wyoming Energy Authority Amendments, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Beitman, Cooper, Rothfuss, and Wasserberger. Absent, Senator Anderson. Signed, Bo Beitman, Acting Chairman. January 20th, Mr. President, your committee number 9, Minerals and Business and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 44, Solid Waste Cease and Transfer Program Funding, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Beitman, Cooper, Rothfuss, and Wasserberger, absent Senator Anderson. Signed, Bo Beitman, Acting Chairman. January 20th, Mr. President, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 61, Amateurization of Sales and Use Tax, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Voting aye, Senators Beitman, Cooper, and Rothfuss. Voting no, Senator Wasserberger, absent Senator Anderson. Signed, Bo Beitman, Acting Chairman. January 20th, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 53, Ground Ambulance Service Provider Assessment Act, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendment. Voting aye, Senator Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, McCune. Voting no, Hutchings. Signed, Senator Baldwin, Chairman. January 20th, Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 54, Statewide Health Information Exchange Codification, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, Hutchings, McCune. Respectfully signed, Senator Baldwin, Chairman. January 21st, 2021. Mr. President, your committee number 4, Education, to whom was referred Senate File 57, School Finance, Dates for Fund Transfers, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Beitman, Ellis, Rothfuss, Salazar, and Scott. Signed, Senator Scott, Chairman. January 21st, 2021. Mr. President, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 25, Animal Impound Proceedings, Bond and Disposition, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. Signed, Brian Boner, Chairman. January 21st. Mr. President, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 26, Animal Abuse Statutes Reorganization and Update, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. Signed, Brian Boner, Chairman. January 21st, Mr. President, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 37, Omnibus Water Bill Planning, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Voting aye, Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. Signed, Brian Boner, Chairman. January 21st, Mr. President, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 50, COVID-19 Business Relief Programs, Agriculture, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Voting aye, Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. Signed, Brian Boner, Chairman. January 21st, excuse me, Mr. President, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 4, Airport Districts, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Furphy, Landon, McCune, and Pappas. Absent, Senator Anderson. Signed, William Landon, Chairman. January 21st. Mr. President, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 10, Department of Transportation, Statutory Amendments. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass with the following amendment. Voting aye, Senators Furphy, Landon, McCune, and Pappas. Absent, Senator Anderson. Signed, William Landon, Chairman. January 21st. Mr. President, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 11, Highway Safety Seatbelts, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Furphy, Landon, and Pappas. Voting no, McCune. Absent, Senator Anderson. Respectfully signed, William Landon, Chairman. January 21st, Mr. President, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 12, Selective Service Registration, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Furphy, Landon, McCune, Pappas. Absent, Senator Anderson. Signed, William Landon, Chairman. Mr. President, that completes the standing committee reports.
Thank you, Majority Floor Leader Driscoll. You have a matter of business to follow up?
I do. Mr. President, absent objection, I request the following Senate files be re-referred to your committee number 2, Appropriations. Senate File 37, Omnibus Water Bill Planning, from committee number 5 to committee number 2, Appropriations. Senate File 45, Monthly Ad Valorem Revisions, from committee number 3, Revenue, to committee number 2, Appropriations. Senate File 60, Monthly Ad Valorem Tax Revisions 2, from committee number 3, Revenue, to committee number 2, Appropriations. Senate File 50, COVID-19 Business Relief Programs, Agriculture, from committee number 5, Agriculture, to committee number 2, Appropriations.
Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, you're at that order of business. Consideration on bills of general file, on general file.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carried. Senator Bill Landon, you'll now preside over the Senate. Turn the hands of the Senate over to the good hands of Senator Bill Landon, Committee of the Whole Chairman. Senator Landon.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. It's good to be back together with you, albeit in a virtual way. Before we get started this morning, Senators, I do want to acknowledge what has already been alluded to in our prayer this morning, and that is that we have a kind of a hole in our heart as we get going. I want to tip my hat to a very good friend and somebody we lost recently, Senator Hank Coe. There was nobody who chaired Committee of the Whole like the good senator from Park County. You had to put your seatbelt on, and boy, did we go through the work. He was outstanding, and I think I speak for all of us in saying that we're really going to miss him. And so let's just remember the kind of decorum and professionalism that Senator Coe always brought with him. And that's a reminder to all of us that that bar remains high. I know that we will keep it right where it belongs today. Good decorum, good ethics, good respect, and off we go into Committee of the Whole. So with that, I will call the Committee of the Whole to order. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 32. Would the Chief Clerk please read the Senate file?
Senate File 32, Water Permit Notice Requirements, an act relating to water. It was referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations, who respectfully reported back a do pass recommendation. Voting aye, Senators Guru, Hicks, Kinski, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Signed, Drew Perkins, Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chief Clerk. You've heard the reading of the Senate file. What is your pleasure, Senator Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, that it do so with a due pass recommendation on Senate File 32, Water Permit Notice Requirements. Mr. Chairman, there are a couple of amendments, and for an explanation of the bill and to deal with the amendments, I ask that the Chairman call upon Senator Kinski.
So Chairman Perkins, thank you for that. And before I go to the good senator from Sheridan County, I was remiss, fellow senators, in not kind of catching us up on a couple of things. And so Senator Kinski, if you could just hang on for a moment. I want to make sure, senators, that everyone is on board with the ability to locate these bills and remind that these amendments appear on their own website. And this is for the public out there as well. But the amendments that will be alluded to by the good senator here in a moment, I would just tell you that you go to wyoledge.gov with a / and then a capitalized legislation. So legislation with a capital L and / again, the word amendment. And amendment is also capitalized, / 2021. And that will get you to the amendments that we will consider today on Committee of the Whole. As you type in Senate file in the box at the top of the page, it will provide for you a menu of all the bills that carry with them the amendments that we will discuss today. So I hope that helps a little bit. Again, I apologize for interrupting Senator Kinski, and it's all yours. Take it away on Senate File 32.
Mr. Chairman, I would defer to Senator Hicks, who is the floor manager on the bill, and I will handle the amendments.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator Hicks.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Senate, Senate File 32 deals with water permit notice requirements. This is part of the state.
Senator Hicks, we are having trouble hearing you. Can you make sure that you're unmuted? Okay, you're still muted at this point, Senator. We might need a volume or there we go. Can you do a check now?
Yeah, apparently my little microphone here isn't working.
Okay, while the Vice President gets set to walk us through Senate File 32, just double checking, senators, are there any questions with regard to the location of legislation or the amendments? Would be happy to make sure that everyone is set to go. And senators, we're not going to hurry through this. It's important to me today to make sure that we all are on board and understanding where we're headed with all of these bills. Senator Hicks, are you all set? Yeah, we cannot hear you, Senator Hicks. So as they work on Senator Bona.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little food for thought. It sounds like Senator Hicks, he's coming in, but it's a little weak, and so maybe it could be as simple as holding the microphone closer to his mouth. Also, fellow senators, I'd note that there's a little caret on your mute. There's a button at the bottom left hand of your screen that says mute. If you click on that little caret in the top right hand corner, it will give an opportunity to test your speakers and microphones without coming over the overall system, so you can have a chance to make sure that the microphones are working and all that. So just I throw that out for the body's consideration.
Thank you, Senator, for that heads up. Chairman Perkins, you had a thought?
Well, I was just going to go ahead and explain the bill unless Senator Hicks's technical difficulties were resolved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go.
And by golly, I think we've got the Vice President now. So Senator Hicks, take it away.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we do have a very talented IT staff here, and we need them for folks like me. With that, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Senate, this deals with water permit notices. This is part of the Wyoming State Engineer's Office Step 3 budget reductions. Was recommended through the governor's office to the JAC. The fiscal note on this would reduce the cost out of the general fund to the state engineer's office of about $5,500 a year. Without enacting this piece of legislation, that reduction in cost won't be realized. So if we go into Senate File 32, it deals with two sections in Wyoming water law. The first is 414502, which deals for applications for water law. And then the second component is a completion of that application. If we go into the first component, what it does is in both sections, what they've done to try to reduce their costs is remove under the application process in the first section. So if you go to 502 and then you flip over and you go to page 3 on the bill, it just changes it rather than on the application. So this provision only comes in if somebody submits a written application to the state engineer's office and the form is found defective for lack of technical issues or any other issues that the state engineer's office finds that the application is deficient. Currently, they have to send that back as certified mail. And so what this provision just says is if rather than certified mail, they just returned it to the existing mail through normal mail processes instead of certified. The second component of the bill goes into and it deals with once you've submitted an application, you have 5 years to complete that application or the construction of that project to meet the beneficial use for the permit that you were issued. If you do not complete construction or you have not submitted the notification of completion within 3 months of the termination of that, the state engineer's office currently has to go and send you registered mail. And then they also run an ad in the closest paper for 3 weeks. What this section does is come back and says, to reduce those costs is they would get rid of the registered mail and it would just be either regular mail or email. And then it eliminates the cost to advertise in the local paper. And then what would happen is they would post that on their website for up to 2 months prior to any expiration of that permit. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would ask if there's any questions on the bill.
Fellow senators, questions. Let's go to Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I'm wondering, I just want to make sure that I understand this right. If I apply via US mail, the Water Commission is going to come back to me through US mail. If I do it by virtue of email, they'll respond to me in email. So let's say that I am, which is a true fact, technologically challenged, and I write a letter, they'll respond to me in letters. Is that the way that's going to work out, Senator?
Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly the way it works right now. Is if you submit a longhand written application, they will return that application if there's any deficiencies through the mail. They do have electronic filing. If you've submitted it electronically, they will respond to you with those deficiencies electronically. I hope that answers the question, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions for Senator Hicks? Senator Scott. Senator Scott, you are muted. If you could unmute for us, thank you.
Chairman, I think he's still muted.
Senator Scott, can you?
There we go, Mr. Chairman.
Gotcha. Take it away, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, this is in the agricultural area, and a lot of mineral people do these too. The question I have for the committee is, did you hear any testimony on effects of this from the state engineer and from interested parties, particularly in the agricultural or mineral business?
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I didn't get the last part of the question, but this was actually brought to the Joint Appropriations Committee as a recommendation as part of their step 3 budget reductions. So it was brought from the state engineer's office. I did not hear the second part of the question.
Senator Case, I saw that you had a hand up, but let's go to Chairman Perkins first, who might be able to help completely answer Senator Scott's question. Senator
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, that was my intent. We did have, I don't remember any particular comments from anybody who was not, who was from the agricultural or mineral industry. We did have a comment, an appearance by folks from the state engineer. Two things that to keep in mind as we talked about this is, first of all, this is in large part because many of the applications are now made online, and so you have if the applications are made online, then typically all communications are back and forth by email and with the online submission. However, if it's by paper, you can also still do it the old way, which is by printing out the paper and filling out the application and moving them back and forth. And so ultimately what happens from the testimony we had from the state engineer's office, if you are making your application by paper, then typically, unless you're asking them to communicate with you otherwise, all communications will continue through paper, and it just kind of moves through the process that way. If the application's online and the communications and the efforts are online, then typically all of the communication back and forth is online. I think the 2 points to keep in mind are, one, and I think that I think Senator Kinski has some committee of the whole amendments to try and address some of these concerns in a little bit more detail. But ultimately what happens is, however you're communicating with the state engineer's office, that's really the method and the practice of how they communicate back with the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little confused here, Mr. Chairman, because I was looking at this bill, which is obviously on water and permitting, and then I looked and I noticed that it was sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, and that kind of threw me off a little bit. Did we go away from the system where we had committees that were kind of like, well, we had a committee called Agriculture, I think we used to have one like that, and then bills would go to the Agricultural Committee and they would, you know, they would talk to the constituency, the people that were involved in water and ag, and they'd get them all together and they'd discuss these kind of things. So are we going to go away from that and just kind of have the appropriations committee do all the bills now? That might be more efficient, especially in this virtual world. I'm interested in that, Mr. Chairman.
So thank you, Senator. And a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek question for Senator Hicks.
You know, Mr. Chairman, in fact, I shared that very concern with my appropriations colleagues, and especially in the light of the fact that just earlier that week, the Select Water Committee had met. And given that this was a step 3 reduction, it's unfortunate that the Appropriations Committee actually was handed this off. It should have gone through the normal. It should have gone to Select Water and then to the Joint Ag, Public Lands and Water Resources Committee, which is the standing committee. This did not come before us until this last round of the budget markup. So it did not have the opportunity to follow the normal process, but because it was a recommendation for a step 3 reduction to the general fund, it fell in the lap of appropriations. It wasn't that we had asked for it. Unfortunately, it landed there. So I think the answer, the good senator from Lander's question is no, this is not going to be the normal process going forward. In fact, that was lodged with many members of the Appropriations Committee. It's an unfortunate situation that if we want to implement these reductions July 1st, that was at that point in time, that's why it ended up before the Appropriations Committee. Hope that's an adequate explanation, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Chairman Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow on to the Vice President about this, I mean, the other thing that happens, and you'll see a number of these bills coming out from the Joint Appropriations Committee, and they all have to do with the step 2 and step 3 reductions. You'll find that, and similar to this, if you're going to do these things, you have to, you know, we instructed staff, the LSO staff, to look at what statutory changes needed to be made when these step reductions came before us. And of course, these are mostly being delivered in front of the Joint Appropriations Committee in December, just prior to and during the budget hearings that we had in December. So it's not the Joint Appropriations Committee isn't meeting in a star chamber during the interim. These are things that come in, and you'll find that in some cases, if you're going to make the budget reductions that the governor's recommended and or that the Joint Appropriations Committee has accepted, or additional reductions made by the Joint Appropriations Committee, and you'll find, and this is one of those, you have to change the statute in order to realize the savings from the budget cuts. In some cases, you'll find that, you know, we're doing it, we have to change because so oftentimes the statutes require certain actions by the state government. And so if those actions are not going to be required in order to realize some savings in how the government and how in the administration of government, you have to do that. But it was the lateness and the time that they came to us. Like I say, it was in December when we became aware of these things. And so ultimately, if we're going to realize the savings associated with some of these, and this is a small one, it's $5,500, but you know, at the end of the day, they add up. And you'll see some of them are small and some of them are larger, but that's just a broader explanation of this. And you'll see a number of bills that come that some of these should have been before other standing committees as far as how they might go, but they came at the 11th hour during the budget recommendations and the budget hearings. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Perkins. Senator Boner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to say for the record, since committee number 5 was mentioned, that I certainly don't have any offense with appropriations taking on this issue. I think, not to pile on to the explanation by the committee members, and even, you know, if I was to continue the tongue-in-cheek atmosphere, I'd say that there's a personal bill of mine that was taken care of by committee number 2 dealing with the Industrial Siding Council. So I kind of appreciate their participation, and especially when viewed through the lens of making sure that we reduce spending and find efficiencies in state government. So just thought I'd throw out that perspective as the chairman of the committee that would normally deal with water issues.
Thank you, Senator. And I'm sure the Appropriations Committee would have afforded that opportunity to any one of the senators. Further questions on Senate File 32? We've got a couple of Committee of the Whole amendments. I'm checking everyone. Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had one comment, and then I'd be happy to move into the two Committee of the Whole amendments. First, with regard to the concerns raised by my good friend from Bates Creek, we did hear from folks in the agricultural community. I heard from a friend of mine in Sheridan County who said, believe it or not, the entire agricultural community has not necessarily moved online. There's still some of us in an analog world. And he took strong exception to being forced to move into the online world, and he prefers to deal with the PO box out on the highway as opposed to an internet connection. And I know that may come as a shock to my friend from Bates Creek, but not everybody is on the internet. So in response to that feedback that we received, the committee directed staff to draft two amendments in concept that we, given that we're trying to move the thing along, that we decided we'd move as amendments on Committee of the Whole. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would move for Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 32, and I would ask the body's favorable consideration. So if you have that amendment in front of you, what it does is this. You heard the process that was described by my colleagues in the application process, which is 502, and in the default process when somebody
Mr.
hasn't
Chairman?
finished their work.
Just a point of order real quick. Do we have to have those amendments read in?
Senator, thank you. We do. And Senator Kinski, just since we're going to read those amendments in, I just want to pause for just a moment. I wanted to check one more time before we went right into the amendments that we didn't have any other questions regarding Senate File 32 before we get to the amendments. It doesn't look like we do. And so, Madam Chief Clerk, would you please read in the first Committee of the Whole amendment?
Mr. Chairman, my apologies. I thought they had been read in. Am I mistaken?
No problem, Senator. We do need to read them in. So,
all right. Thank you.
Chief Clerk.
Senate File 32, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, page 1, line 7.
Okay, Senator Kinski, now we're good to go on this First Amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, the amendment having been read in, I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 32. Ask the body's favorable consideration. In the discussion on the bill in the whole, you heard that we had opened up section 502, which dealt with applications, and 506, which dealt with, in part, defaults. And you heard described a process where people pick either electronic or U.S. mail, but there was nowhere in the statute that we actually dictated that that's the process that's to take place. So accordingly, Section 501, which kicks off this whole section of statute, was reopened. And this amendment then makes clear that at the applicant process, you'll see an amendment on line 17 that the applicant shall set forth their name and their email address. And then on lines 24 through 27 is where we have an opt-in, much as you would get on a credit card or a bank statement. So the default is people are going to get their notice by mail, U.S. mail. And if they want to opt into electronic, they can do so. So it's the addition of this. The application shall also state whether the applicant will opt for any notices issued under this article to be delivered only by electronic means. And each applicant shall maintain a current post office and email address with the state engineer. There was no requirement that people actually keep a current address on file. So that's the amendment, and I'll stand for any questions that folks may have.
Senators, we are on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, let me begin by extending my compliments to the senator that presented the amendment for being very clear and explicit as to what the amendment does. And let me just say, so I don't have to say it again, that I really appreciate that, because what I had technical troubles with my computer and finally was able to go looking for amendments this morning, and they got me through that process, but there's no way that I can figure out how to look at them at the same time I'm running this, have this Zoom running. And so I do not have the amendments in front of me. So the kind of explanation that we just got on this one is much appreciated here. The amendment process is really not working as well as it might.
Okay, thank you, Senator Scott. Any other questions on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have, first of all, a quick point to make, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask the body, particularly those that are in the chamber, to mute their audio when not speaking. It tends to pile up non-mutes, and then we hear feedback out in the wild. So please remember to mute yourself if you're not actively speaking. And then as far as a question, Mr. Chairman, as drafted on the amendment, the final sentence, each applicant shall maintain a current post office and email address with the state engineer. I don't believe that would only mean the applicants that are opting for electronic engagement. So it would imply a required email address from any applicant, even those that would just want to use post office delivery, and folks that, for example, don't have an email address, although that might be rare at this point. So am I misreading that, or do we need to potentially tweak that on second reading to provide a little bit of flexibility for the email if somebody doesn't actually have or use email? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kinski, thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I believe the senator from the Ivory Tower is correct, and that we do need to adjust that a little bit on a second reading amendment for those that don't have an email or just don't want to deal with it.
Okay, thanks to the minority floor leader. Any follow-up, Senator? Are you good?
Call for the question.
All those in favor of Senator Kinski's motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 32, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Please raise your hand. Okay, that amendment has passed. We are on to Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2. Would the Chief Clerk please read in the second amendment?
Senate File 32, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2, corrected copy. Page 5, line 11.
My apologies. Thank you for that. Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to Senate File 32, the corrected copy. And folks, I apologize. There was a little bit of adjustment that needed to be made in the language of the amendment. So those of you that printed it out earlier, you're going to need to pull down the corrected copy. So what this addresses on page 5 of your bill is the strike of the requirement that if somebody can't be reached any other way, that the notice of their possible loss of a water right be published in the newspaper. And this stemmed from concerns raised in the committee, as well as a constituent in ag that, you know, if all else fails, run an ad in the local newspaper, and and somebody will see it and poke their buddy in the ribs and say, hey, you better get on this thing. So what this amendment does is basically says that if the department cannot get, the engineer's office cannot get a hold of the permit holder either by mail or by email, if that's what they've addressed, then they publish it. It restores the publication requirement that it goes back into the newspaper for 3 weeks and also on the state engineer's website. So what I'd like to do is read to you the amendment interlineated into the bill. So if you pick up your bill on page 5, starting with line 11, you go to the end, it says if, we keep that if, and we are going to restore part of the next sentence. If the permit holder cannot be reached by, and strike registered mail because the balance of the bill strikes the registered mail requirement, reached by mail or email, then we restore old language. Or if the address or email address of the permit holder is unknown, the state engineer shall publish notice of the default on the state engineer's website and for 3 weeks in a newspaper of general circulation published in the county, or in case there's no newspaper of general circulation published in the county, then a newspaper published in the state of Wyoming and in general circulation in the county, the last publication to be for at least 2 months before the cancellation of the permit. I hope that helps in terms of helping to understand what this amendment does. It jumps around a little bit. We strike some new language and reinsert stricken language. So the net of it is, if the engineer can't get a hold of them by whatever their selected known means of notification is, before somebody loses their water right, put it in the newspaper. That's absolutely a last fallback. And with that, I would urge favorable consideration and stand for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kinski, I do think that was helpful, given our format today and the challenges that were articulated by Senator Scott a little bit earlier. I think that is very helpful. Anything we can do to track these amendments in to make sure that all of us are on the same page, very helpful. But Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I hate to do this, but I want to divide the amendment. So, Mr. Chairman, do you have the amendment in front of you?
I do.
Okay. So Division 1 would be line 1 through line 6. Division 2 would be line 7 through line 12.
Okay, that is divisible. Senator Hicks, do you want to speak on Division 1?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I think Division 1's adequate because it's conforming to the other amendment that we just adopted that says mail or email. I think that's consistent with the bill and what the intent is. So I think that helps clarify it. With that, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you want to dispose of that at this point in time, but I would recommend an aye vote on Division 1.
Okay, any questions or thoughts related to Division 1 of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2? All right, Senator Kinski.
No, Mr. Chairman, I think the question is in order, and so the debate is going to be on whether we keep the newspaper publication, which is the second part of it. So I think a quick vote on this first division is in order.
Okay.
And I'd urge an aye vote.
All in favor of Division 1 of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2, please raise your hand to the screen so that we can see it. Okay, any opposed? Okay, Division 1 has passed Committee of the Whole. We are on to Division 2. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, on and against Division 2. I think that with the new language that we've adopted in this bill and the current amendment, so keep in mind, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose your water right. The first provision provides just for the application. Now, once they issue you the permit, this is when this section of water rights come in. And as part of that permit, you have 5 years to complete construction of the project. And then once you complete that, the state engineer's office actually sends you a form that says you have to submit that upon completion. You have 5 years to do that. If they haven't received that information back of the completion of the permit, then this provision in the water law comes in. But what we've done already, we've gone in and says, if you submitted your application by email, we will correspond with you by email. If you submitted it by paper, we will correspond with you by paper. Or you can choose and check the box on the application how you want to be notified. So we've gone through that complete notification. And if we look at the language on the last amendment, it also says, and I think the minority floor leader was correct on this, we can tweak that second reading, but it says each applicant shall maintain a current post office rather than an email. It'll be or email address. So they have the responsibility to maintain that point of contact. So they've done that through the permit process. They've identified what their email, their post office box is. It says their responsibility to maintain those with the state engineer's office. And so now they get their permit, they get 5 years to construct their project. State engineers haven't heard from them. Now it says is the state engineer will contact you based on the email address or the post office or both if you chose to be contacted at that point in time. At that point in time, they will send that notice back out. Plus, they will post all these 2 months before expiration of that permit to construct. Will be posted on their website. The idea now that we're going to put suspenders, belt, I don't know what else we could put on this thing, but we're really loading this up. The notification in newspapers, I don't see as a necessary venue that we need to have on there with all the safeguards and the process and the procedures that we've currently put in place. And all this does is drive the cost up to the state engineer's office on general fund budget. So on and against the amendment, I think it's unnecessary and it just adds additional costs.
Okay, thank you, Senator Hicks. Any questions? Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, this amendment is my own. It's not one that was championed by the committee. I should make that clear. I think I might have misspoken earlier that both amendments were championed by the committee, only the first one. This is mine. And the reason I think it's important is that of the $5,500 we hope to save, I think just shy of $4,000 of that was registered mail, and the rest was advertising, which is rare. But I guess my reaction is if somebody was invested enough in a project to submit an application and undertake this process, and then they can't be reached by whatever the selected method is, US mail or email, something's gone wrong. Something's gone terribly wrong. And who knows? It's usually, trouble doesn't come by one, it comes by dozens. And so I think before you blank somebody out on a water right, you run an ad in the newspaper as a last ditch effort to say, we don't know why we haven't heard from you. We don't have a current address for you. We posted on the website. We're talking about people that aren't necessarily looking on the website to see if they're in default on a water permit. Run it in the county newspaper so that when the senator from Bates Creek is in getting his hair cut, somebody will turn to him and say, I see your name in the paper. And he has a chance at that point to say, gee, I forgot to check the state engineer's website. I must not have a current mailbox on file, whatever it is. Just water is too important. A water right is too important to take a chance on something slipping through the cracks. So hopefully these newspaper publications are unnecessary and rare, but when they do get run, you can be sure that something went horribly wrong and it's a last ditch effort to save a water right. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman.
Senators, we are on Division 2 of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2. Senator Perkins, and then Mr. President will come to you, but Senator Perkins?
Mr. Chairman, I'll always defer to the president. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Mr. President, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the spirit of transparency, one of our companies includes a newspaper, but I want to clear that up front, but also be voting on it because I feel it represents something of a much larger constituency. And I say that because we all know how precious water is, and it's been a point of conflict and much discussion across the state as we deal with water rights. And for a minimal cost, a minimal procedure, a minimal way of making sure that people understand we're playing around with water rights, I'll be voting for this amendment from the good senator from Sheridan. Thank you.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against Division 2, I would normally agree with the concerns expressed by my good friend from Sheridan and my good friend from the Valley of the Stars, the far west. I think this is a little different, though. In my business, I do a lot of probate work and a lot of situations, a lot of other things in my legal practice where we publish in newspapers, and there's good reason for that, and that's generally because generally the format is that you notify in person all those persons that you can readily identify who have an interest in the project. You notify them by mail, and then you publish in the off event that there's someone out there that you've missed that has a specific interest in something, and ultimately if you haven't made the effort to notify that person directly by mail or other that they received the actual notice, then the publication is kind of this catch-all. And the reason I don't think it's applicable in Division 2 and why I'm voting against this is because for a couple of reasons. One is that this is the final effort. This is an entire process that's been initiated by someone seeking a water right from the state, and they make the application, they go through the initial approval process, the state engineer gives them the authority to go forward, then they've got 5 years to get this done. So this is incumbent on the person who's applying for this water right to finish this off. And so that's why it's incumbent. I mean, if you're seeking a driver's license or you're seeking a passport, at the end of the day, you're seeking some benefit that comes from the state, it's incumbent upon the applicant to see it through if they want that benefit. In this case, they've got to do that. And so what you're doing here is you're imposing both an additional requirement on the state and on the state engineer's office, although it's a small burden, a burden on the state to pay money to try and contact you, to try and see that you finish what's required of you to finish off and secure this right for you and your land and anybody who owns your land in the future. And so that's a little bit different in this case because there's got to be some responsibility of the applicant to finish the process so that he or she can realize that benefit. And in this case, they've fallen off the radar. Something may have happened, but ultimately they're no longer communicating and they're not finishing off what they're required to finish off in order to secure their water right. So this is not a situation where you're changing water rights. This is not a situation where there's a transfer of a water right. This is a situation where you've got to finish it off. And so I think one, it's a matter of personal responsibility, and I don't see why the taxpayers should have the burden of paying for this. The second thing that also happens that in my experience is very few people see or read these legal notices in the newspaper. If you find about them, it's probably because you went to Bridge Club or you spent some time in the barber shop and somebody else saw it and they mention it. In this case, the other thing that happens too is when you publish, you can publish, for example, you're not supposed to use proper names. So also you can publish in the newspaper that's headquartered in Casper and is a statewide newspaper. You can publish in that because it has enough circulation that it covers, you can publish there and cover every county in the state. or you can publish in the local newspaper that has circulation in that county, has sufficient circulation in that county. So even when you do that, there's, how many different newspapers does someone have to look in to do that? The long and the short of it is that it's a matter of due process. The due process comes from making sure that you are communicating with it and you finish off the process that you started with the state engineer's office. And for those reasons, I'll be voting against Division 2. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further comments on Division 2 of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2? Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and just so I want to make sure that everybody understands the process and what happens. And so once you've received your permit, you have 5 years to do that. And the state is vesting in you, and I think Senator Perkins did a good job, a property right. It becomes your property and you have a vested interest to exercise that property, which you are obligated to fulfill the process. But let's assume that for whatever reason that the permit holder didn't comply with the process. And you get all the way and you got 5 years to do this. If you get to 4 years and 364 days, you can file for an extension. And I am not aware of a time that if you have good cause that the state engineers have not granted that extension. But let's just assume for some reason you didn't follow through with your due diligence and that permitted was default. So what does that mean practically? It means you no longer have a water right that was issued under that permit. Typically, and as somebody has dealt with these on numerous occasions, what we do and what you can do then is you turn around and you file another application. Then you hand in your construction completion work and you have a permit to do that water. So you're not taking away that water right. You're putting a process in place that they have to go back. The only thing that changes in that process is the priority date. That's the only thing that would change. And so if you filed in 2000 and you went all the way to the end of the process, you still have a 2000 and water right. If you filed in 2000 and you never completed your paperwork and you came back in 2006 and you realized that for whatever reason you didn't file your completion report, you then submit an application to refile for that water right, and now you have a 2006 water right priority date instead of a 2005 priority date. So it does not preclude in any form or fashion from those people that have not followed through with due diligence to come back and reapply and reobtain that property right in that water for the purpose for which they constructed the project. Again, I think this is just a little too much given the nature of the process, what we're doing. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd call for the question on division number 2.
Okay, all in favor of Division 2 of Committee? I'm going to back up a minute. Senator Scott.
He's voting.
Was that just a vote, Senator Scott? Okay, my apologies. Senators, we are voting on Division 2 of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2. All in favor of Division 2, please raise your hand to the screen. Okay, Madam Chief Clerk, did you get a number count on that?
I did not get a good count, Mr. Chairman. I need them to hold their hand up until the count is announced, please. And I had some late hands, so I apologize.
No, that's quite all right. So for Madam Chief Clerk, all in favor of Division 2, keep your hand up for us, please. Thank you.
14.
Madam Chief Clerk, I have 14 as well. Those opposed to Division 2, please raise your hand.
14?
I had 16, Madam Chief Clerk. So those,
We have one absent.
yeah. So let's do a count on those who are opposed to Division 2. Thank you for your patience, everyone. But Division 2, those opposed to Division 2 of the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2.
I get 13, Mr. Chairman.
I do too. Division 2 of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 has passed. We are back on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to Senate File 32. Is there further comment? Senator
Point
Scott.
of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order.
First of all, point of order, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe you said we're back on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2, but we've dispatched of both divisions, so we should now be back on the bill itself, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rothfuss, for that clarification. We are back on the bill, and now Senator Scott.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the previous debate raised a question in my mind that was germane to the bill as a whole and not the amendments. It was presented that there were, as if there were only two options when you get to the end of one of these permit periods. Either you construct or you lose the permit. In my personal experience, there's a third option that has been used and it can be very important. And that is the state engineer can, upon request, grant an extension. And we saw that here in Bates Creek. I requested an extension a number of times, got it because we are studying to find out, was there really the water there to justify drilling another well? And the answer eventually came back, there wasn't. And that answer eventually proved to be correct. But my question on this bill is, there's nothing in the bill, is there, that changes that possibility? I didn't find anything, but it sounded like the proponents of the bill were only looking at two possible options.
Senator Kinski, what about those concerns?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. On page 4 of the bill, lines 15 through 17, the existing language of the statute is maintained, which says, for good cause shown, the state engineer may at any time or from time to time before the date of expiration extend any or all of these periods. So that status quo is maintained in case there's a mishap on Bates Creek in terms of getting the water project going.
Okay, thank you, Senator Kinski. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, back on the general bill, and after all the discussion and understanding the amendments helped me to understand the bill a little bit better. Mr. Chairman, I'm left with an impression that there are circumstances under which it matters that the applicant receive the information authoritatively from the engineer's office. And if that is the circumstance, then in my view, general USPS is insufficient. We need registered mail if we're going to require a circumstance where you actually are certain as the state that they have received the communication. And with that, I'm not personally willing to save $5,500 to risk a circumstance where the communication is not made and the state cannot authoritatively say, oh, yes, you did get the letter. We have proof you got the letter. Here, I'm holding it up. It would be very easy for an applicant just to say, I never got the mail. And the state would come back and say, as far as I know, you never got the mail. And that would have to suffice. And I'm not entirely sure what then happens. And again, we're talking about at best $5,500. And there wasn't, as I understand it, extensive public testimony from applicants. We're really just trying to save money here. So I'm a little uncomfortable at this point, and I may well be wrong. I may have just misunderstood, and maybe it doesn't matter that the applicant is informed. So I guess I'd ask just the proponents one time, does it matter if the applicant receives the mail?
So I'm looking at the gentlemen who have kind of carried this on the floor today. Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, one of the biggest savings is actually reducing the requirement of certified mail or registered mail. Again, two things. One is this is a process that the taxpayer, the resident, the person seeking the water right is initiated. So it's, but two things in direct the discussion of the good minority floor leader's comments, and that is, when you find that you have a restricted form of mail delivery, such as certified mail or registered mail, the truth of the matter is that you are actually reducing the opportunity that the person to whom you're trying to contact is receiving actual notice. Both the UPS's experience and my experience, because I send a lot of stuff certified because statutes require it to be certified. This day and age, many people will not sign for a registered or certified mail because they know that nothing good ever happens or comes in certified or registered mail. It's only bad news. It's from the Internal Revenue Service. It's from some other revenuer somewhere, or it's, you're getting sued or something bad is happening. So people just don't sign for it. I can tell you the vast majority of the mail I send out registered or certified return receipt required comes back undelivered. And so my practice is that even though I send it out registered, I send it certified. I also send it by registered mail because those very rarely come back. The delivery percentage is much higher with registered mail, with first class mail than it is for any kind of restricted mail delivery, such as certified or registered. And so if the point of this is to provide actual notice, means getting the person real notice that they had the opportunity, and so that they understood what was going on. And so, believe it or not, even though it's a little bit counterintuitive, you actually improve the chances that the person receives actual notice by certified mail. And therefore, and you find all kinds of processes with, even in due process, that what's required is simply the mailing be to the last known address, because there's no way, because this happens so often. And if you have to prove actual delivery or actual receipt, it becomes very difficult, other than sending a personal process server out to deliver it and have it hand delivered to someone, so that by a process server, and that becomes just unwieldy on these types of things. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Perkins. Every time I hang out with you, I learn something. Appreciate those comments. Any other further comments on Senate File 32? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Perkins' motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 32, please raise your hand.
$26.
Are there any opposed?
One.
Madam Chief Clerk, are you good?
One opposed.
That's what I had as well. So Senate File 32 has passed Committee of the Whole, Senators, and we are on to Senate File 12. Would the Chief Clerk?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kinski,
Privilege of the floor.
you may have it, sir.
Took us an hour and a half to save $5,500. We may be here a while. I think that was a good shakedown cruise, Mr. Chairman. Also, I think there's never any question about how much we appreciate staff and what they do in terms of helping bill flow and amendments and paper, but there's no question, given the current circumstance, that we really miss our usual standard operating procedures and our staff. And we look forward to being back together with them all soon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate that as well, Senator Kinski. And I was sitting here thinking that the only appropriateness of that kind of time on a particular bill is the fact that we were talking about water. And generally in Wyoming, whenever Senator Hicks and others stand up to talk about water, we're going to spend a few minutes. So Senator Hicks, right back to you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the privilege of the floor. I just would hope that Senator Kinski would follow his own observation and not bring so many amendments in the future. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, Madam Chief Clerk, would you please read in the Senate File 12?
Senate File 12, Selective Service Registration, an act relating to selective service sponsored by Transportation. Transportation Committee met on January 21st, 2021, and respectfully submitted a recommendation of due pass, signing or voting in the affirmative, Senators Furphy, Landon, McCune, and Pappas. Senator Anderson absent, signed Senator Landon, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chief Clerk. You've heard the reading of the Senate file. What is your pleasure, Senator Pappas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that Senate File 0012, Selective Service Registration, do pass. And to present this bill, I'll just keep it in my court.
Okay, you have the floor, Senator Pappas.
Thank you. This short 4-page bill requires certification of selective service registration while a person, at the same time, a person applies for a driver's license or an identification card. And this applies to all applications for learner's permits, driver's license, new driver's licenses, and renewal of driver's license. In 42 states in the District of Columbia and all 5 of the US territories, this same legislation is on their books. And that's because it helps ensure that men register with the selective service system, which is a law. They're all men between 18 and 26 are required to register. The issue is that in the states that don't have this legislation tied to their driver's license applications, they find that the registration level is fairly low. And when the registration is low, there are a lot of penalties that can befall these applicants. And so by tying it to the driver's license or identification card registration, we can help these young individuals comply with the law and avoid penalties without failing to register. Currently, only 37% of Wyoming 18-year-olds, or 37% are not registered with the Selective Service. And if they fail to register, they may permanently lose access to federal educational loans and grants, federal jobs, including work with the U.S. Postal Service, job training under the Workforce Innovation Service Act. Also, there is a growing number of private sector employees, such as FedEx, who requires Selective Service system registration as a condition of employment. And the key is once they become 26 years old, they can no longer apply. They can no longer register. They only have that period between 18 and after they turn 26. So if they miss that window, they'll never ever be able to work for the federal government or get a federal loan or any of that. And while most of us who are my age remember selective service as it was fresh in our minds because we did have the draft in my day. Today we do not have the draft, but someday it may come. And so another good point of doing this is that the folks that do actually abide by the law and go get registered will be in the pool for a possible draft. Those who don't register, they'll be breaking the law, but they will, the percentage of people that are eligible for the draft will be lower. And so the law-abiding people will actually, it'll be less fair for those folks. So legislation like this has been supported from on the federal level from every administration since the Clinton era. So it's something that I think is good for our folks. There's, if you look at the fiscal note, there's less than $3,000, and that's just to change the application requirements. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll entertain questions.
Questions for the Vice Chairman, rather, of Transportation, Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just going through the bill here, looking at paragraphs A and B, and just wondering what happens in paragraph B where it says there's an opportunity for the applicant to give their consent to use this information to the selective service. I'm just wondering what happens if they don't check that box or don't give that consent, especially given the fact that in paragraph A, it says the department shall forward this information. So just wondering how that works if they, for whatever reason, somebody doesn't want their information forwarded onto the selective service. And I just had that technical question right off the bat.
Senator Pappas.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's my understanding that if you actually sign the application, and maybe someone can correct me, if you actually sign the application to get a driver's license or an ID card, then that gives the authority to the department to send that information to the Selective Service Commission.
Okay, thank you, Senator Pappas. Further questions of the good senator? Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Pappas, quick question. You mentioned that if a young man does not sign up for the draft in this way, of course, they'll be breaking the law. And then you said that in testimony that those who didn't break the law, the assumption is that when and if there is a draft, that is the pool will pull from, and those who didn't sign up are free to roam the country without being sought out by the Selective Service. Is that kind of what you're saying, that if you don't sign up, we won't know where you are?
Mr. Chairman, what I was trying to explain was that, you know, if 100% of the males 18 to 20 through 25 actually end of 25. If 100% of them are eligible, you have 100% of the people in the pool for the draft. If 75% of them or 25% of them don't sign up, then that pool becomes 75 of the percent of the entire body of people 18 to 25. So if the draft selects from only 75% of the entire amount of people that would be eligible, then those 75% who have actually abided by the law have a higher percentage of being drafted. That's all I'm getting at. So it's unfair to the people who are abiding by the law. So those people who don't abide by the law really put the law-abiding folks at a disadvantage.
Senator Hutchings, follow up?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking how I can phrase it. So in essence, this bill is just kind of like a reminder. You go to the DMV, you apply for your driver's license, you see that little square there, and you can choose still to mark it or not mark it. Is that the basis of what we're doing here? Just a quick reminder in a place where we believe most young people are going to go and see that. Will there be any kind of second question, will there be any kind of information there so when they see you have to sign up for selective service, they know exactly what they're doing? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm not too sure about whether there's information available at our driver services that explain selective service. There may be. I could find out for you and bring that information to you at a later time. But the intent is that if you actually sign for a driver's license, you will also that information will be transmitted to selective service. And the important fact about this is that even if selective service somehow never got that signature or that authority from that information from the driver services, or that it ever got lost on record, selective service folks told us that if this law was on the books at the time they had a driver's license, then that would be prima facie evidence that they have signed up for selective service, even if all their records were somehow misplaced. So just by having an identification card or by having a driver's license in a state that had this driver license legislation, they would take that as evidence of being registered.
Okay, further questions for the Vice Chairman? Any other questions? Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I kind of have a philosophical issue, I guess, with this bill, but it seems like driver's licenses, they're pretty necessary for people to have. You just can't really exist in a modern world without being able to operate a motor vehicle and use it legally. And we've tried to take the driver's license system and kind of expand what that means. Is a form of identification. We all know that, and we've worked, some of us kicking and screaming, but we have what's called Real ID now. Our driver's license is consistent across the United States. It allows you to board airplanes. It really has turned into a powerful form of identification. We also use the hammer of the driver's license for other things. Our federal government partners encouraged us to require that people pay their child support, and if they didn't pay their child support, then they could be denied a driver's license eventually. That actually, went further to other kinds of licenses. But it's sort of like the driver's license is a form of kind of a requirement that government has on its citizens, and they keep using the driver's license, and you are having to get one to to increase the requirements that you have to do to comply. And so I understand that this is sort of voluntary, but if you sign your driver's license, you have complied, and I'm not sure that we should make everybody be good citizens by denying them a driver's license or not. I want people to be registered for selective service, Mr. Chairman. I think that it's important to have a ready pool of people to keep our military strong and protect this country. But do we always have to use this driver's license, which is so important for people, to kind of conform our society to the norms that our federal partners, really it's typically a federal requirements, say? So I kind of, I have that basic philosophy, and I probably won't support this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Case. Senator Scott. Senator Scott, you need to unmute.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, technical problems. Mr. Chairman, speaking on and for the bill, and I wasn't planning to get into this one at all, but I think that the argument that we're really the reason to pass this bill, Mr. Chairman, is a trap for the unwary in there. The selective service system is living proof that an unneeded federal program never goes away. One of the problems with our system. But the feds have put some pretty nasty consequences on not signing up, giving you a deadline. If you don't miss it, you're stuck with that decision for the rest of your life, even if you didn't realize the trouble you were getting into. And I think that what this bill does is keeps a fair number of our citizens from getting into some trouble they don't need to get into. And that's the way we need to look at this bill.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the discussion and the debate, and it's very easy to see both sides, I think, on this. The point made by the good senator from Bates Creek about just trying to help folks out and make sure that they are able to sign without missing the opportunity. That would be something by itself that I think I would support if that were the phrasing of the bill, just giving that clear opportunity to register right then, check the box, and you're registered if you choose to. So it's a voluntary choice. But at the end of the day, I share the concern of my good colleague from Fremont County about the idea that we're using what is effectively a state right, and we're withholding that state right if you don't comply with a federal law. And that's regardless of the circumstance, regardless of the quality of the state law that the federal law that we're complying with, which in this case is obviously a very worthy objective. It's still not a good practice in my mind either to enforce federal laws through state rights such as a driver's license, which is truly independent. And it's a road that I'm uncomfortable going down any further than we've already gone down. In fact, I'd like to back up on that road if we could, but we certainly don't have those bills in front of us. So as this is written right now, I share the same concerns and can't support it. And if it does move forward, maybe there are some amendment opportunities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Further comments, questions? Senator Cooper.
I have to agree with Senator Rothfuss there. I think this is a misuse of our driver's license system. It's not our responsibility to become the enforcers of this inappropriate or outdated federal law. I can see future use for it, but it's their responsibility to enforce the law, not ours. I don't feel anyway that I can support us further encumbering our driver's license system. Thank you.
Senator Pappas.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I don't think we're intending to enforce any federal law. The intent in this legislation is to assist our young folks in complying with a law that they already have. It just assists them in complying. We're not forcing or we're not forcing anybody to do that. What it does, it brings, there actually is no box to check. All there is there a space in the application that says by my signature.
Senator Pappas, you have kind of frozen up for a moment. We'll give you an opportunity to come back to that comment. In the meantime, I'm going to see if there's anyone else who would like to weigh in. Let's go with Senator James and then Senator Cooper after that. Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel that this is more of a personal responsibility issue, not a government responsibility. If someone chooses to not sign up, then they should be suffer the consequences. You know, they know that it's pretty widely known that you need to sign up for selective services, and a lot of people go to college, and a lot of people sign up for loans. And when you sign up for student loans, that's one of the requirements is you sign up for selective services. So the fact that you do that, and then a lot of people are already signed up for it. So if someone chooses not to sign up for selective services, then it's not the state's job to enforce federal laws. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We're not even giving people the option, because even though there is that space on there, the moment you sign that signature, you're already given the consent. There is no option, and that's taking people's personal responsibility away. And, you know, that's not the government's position, or that shouldn't be the government's position. Thank you.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the senator there. It's personal responsibility. It's not state responsibility. I see no correlation between the selective service and our right for a driver's license. It's further infringement on our state's rights by federal government, as far as I'm concerned. I don't see any reason for this to move forward.
Further comments before I go back to the Vice Chairman. Senator McEwen.
Having problems with the mute button. I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
That's okay. You've got the floor now, Senator.
As I'm listening to this, there's a question of whether or not you're going to get the driver's license, whether you check yes or no. And as I'm hearing, you could still get the driver's license by checking no, which to me makes the whole point moot to begin with. If you can get a driver's license and not be required to sign up, and we're not going to make you required to sign up, or if we're going to put a box on there that you can check yes or no and not give you a driver's license, the whole yes or no box is either moot or the whole process is moot. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I apologize. I think I may have misunderstood with my initial question. I don't think there is an opportunity, the way I now understand it, to check yes or no. Either you sign the papers that give you a driver's license, and as a result, they send your information to the selective service, or you don't. So there's, why I understand it now, there's no actual option. So I didn't correctly read that at the beginning. But just to bring up one more consideration, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure, and maybe there's some discussion in the committee, that just by simply increasing the amount of people who check the box and the percentage of people in Wyoming who register for selective service, I'm not sure if that actually increases our military readiness. And I'd have to listen, and if there's members who have experience of serving on active duty or in any capacity, when there's a draft going on, please correct me if I'm wrong. And I imagine it might be determined by the circumstances. But when you have folks who are drafted, the quality of the people serving is going to go down because they may not want to be there necessarily. That and just hearing stories, you know, the last time obviously this happened was Vietnam. There's lots of challenges that are associated with leading draftees as opposed to an all-volunteer force. So if we are trying to get at this very last bit of the population that would not otherwise register, and for whatever reason, where they don't understand what the requirements are, whether they want to avoid it for other reasons, is that actually helping our military readiness if we're just trying to get every last box checked, if the folks at selective service just want to increase the percentage? So I'm not sure if that was part of the discussion, but it's an open question in my mind, whether just having a larger pool actually really helps. If presumably, and once again, if this is wrong by somebody who has experience in the military during the time when the draft is present, but simply by expanding the pool, we may not be expanding the quality of the folks available. So just an open question.
Senator Pappas, I want to come back to you because you got interrupted there technologically. So back to you, Senator. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, my internet dropped there for a second. Just to respond to Senator Bollner's question, I don't think this is intended for any readiness or to increase the I guess the efficiency of our armed forces. It's certainly known that we get a higher quality force with voluntary rather than compulsive service. And so the idea that we'll ever go back to a draft, probably, who knows, but if it was up to the military, they would like to not see that happen. There are a lot of issues with making people serve. It reduces the quality of the force, and I don't think that we'll probably see that, unless something really drastic happens and we need to conscript people. But the intent is for the selective service. The federal law is to have a draft someday in the future in case we need it. And should we need it, we would want all the males that are of that age group to be in the pool. And frankly, the selective service folks have told me that they're looking at legislation now to also include women, ever since women were able to go into combat, but that still has happened on the federal level yet. So it's only males.
Thank you, Senator. Let's go back to Senator Cooper, and then we'll move toward wrapping this up. Senator Cooper.
I'm not seeing here, maybe I'm misreading this, but I'm reading this as saying I have to provide a copy of my draft card to get my driver's license renewed. I haven't had a copy of my draft card for 50 years. So I see a lot of encumbrances here, even on trying to, for a young man trying to go out and get his driver's license, or for some of us older folks that that may or may not have retained that card. So I think this thing is just stepping out way too far. I just can't see any purpose of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Pappas, I don't remember anything regarding having to show a draft card, but maybe you can take that one. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I can respond to Senator Cooper's say, and maybe what I should have done is actually walk through the bill. I regret not doing that. I thought it was simple enough, but if you go to page 2, line 7 through 13, basically it says an application shall include a space for certification and notice to the applicant that reads, quote, "By my signature, I certify that I am consenting to using information submitted on this application for registration with the United States Selective Service System if my registration is required by law," end quote. So they're not providing anything other than what's already on the driver's license application: their name, their address, their weight, their height, their eye color, all of that stuff. Whatever's on the current driver's license application, all they're doing is they're just signing the form, and by signing the form, they consent to having that information transmitted to the federal government. That's all. We're not having to provide, they don't have to provide a draft card or anything. That's not part of this. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Cooper.
Page 4, lines 1 and 2. An application shall include information required by WS 31-7-143. Isn't that asking for that?
Senator Pappas, do you have an answer for that question?
Mr. Chairman, all that we created 31-7-143. That's everything up above. Okay. So the application shall include all that information up above. And the information up above states that the only thing we're doing is adding a certification on the application that reads that sentence that I just read you. Okay. I don't know if I can make it any more clear.
Okay. Senators, any other questions for Senator Pappas? Are you ready for question?
Senator Hutchings.
Senator Hutchings, I'm sorry.
That's
Please.
okay, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Senator Pappas, quick question. If a young man decides not to get a driver's license, I'm finding the last time I was in that young people aren't rushing out like we did back in our day to get driver's licenses. Where can a young man sign up for selective service if at the age of 18 if they don't use this process?
Senator Pappas.
Certainly they can use the methods that are in place right now. Obviously, just get in touch with the selective service system and register.
Okay, are you ready for the question on Senate File 12? All those in favor of Senator Pappas's motion to that when the committee of the whole rises to report, to do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 12, please raise your hand to the camera.
Ten.
Okay, all those opposed, please raise your hand.
17.
Thank you, Madam Chief Clerk. Senate File 12, having failed a roll call vote pursuant to I guess, Madam Chief Clerk, we do need a roll call on that if it failed the voice vote. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do.
Okay, would you please take roll on Senate File 12?
Senate File 12. Anderson, absent. Baldwin?
No.
No. Whitman?
Excused.
Boner?
No.
No. Bouchard?
No.
No. Case?
No.
No. Cooper?
No.
No. Driscoll?
No.
No. Ellis? Ellis?
No.
No. French?
No.
No. Furphy?
Aye.
Aye. Guru?
No.
No. Hicks?
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings?
No.
No. James?
No.
No. Kinsky?
Aye.
Aye. Cole?
Aye.
Aye. Cost?
Aye.
Aye. Landon?
No.
No. McCune?
Mute.
No.
No. Nethercott?
No.
No. Pappas?
Aye.
Aye. Perkins?
Perkins, no.
Perkins, no. Rothfuss?
No.
No. Salazar?
No.
No. Schuler?
Aye.
Aye. Scott?
Aye.
Aye. Steinmetz? Steinmetz?
No.
No. Wasserberger?
No.
No. President Dockstetter?
No.
No. Weidman? Excuse.
Excused.
Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 12, 8 aye, 20 no, 1 excused, 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Chief Clerk. Senate File 12, having failed a roll call vote pursuant to SR 6-S subparagraph A, is deemed indefinitely postponed. I am looking on the screen for the majority floor leader.
Floor leader.
And if you want to continue on with another bill, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you want to give a thumbs up on that? Should we keep going?
Mr. Chairman, one more bill, please.
Okay. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 29, Revised Uniform Law on Notarial Acts. Would the Chief Clerk please read in the bill?
Senate File 29, Revised Uniform Law on Notarial Acts, an act relating to notaries, notarial officers, and notarial acts, sponsored by corporations. It was referred to corporations who returned a recommendation that it do pass amended. Voting in the affirmative, Senators Boner, Case, Driscoll, Nethercott, and Scott. Signed, Senator Driscoll, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, it do so with a recommendation that Senate File 29 do pass. And for further explanation, I ask you to call on the great Senator Nethercott.
Senator Driscoll, before we do that, there is a standing committee amendment. Would you like for that to be read in at this time?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman.
Senate File 29, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 9, line 15.
Senator Nettencott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good senators, I am thrilled to be presenting to you Senate File 29, a 74-page bill right before your lunch break. Hopefully I can summarize this bill rather than walking through all 74 pages. But as you can see, this is the revised Uniform Law on Notarial Acts. And the reason for this bill coming forward right now to you and what the revisions actually do is allow for remote online notarizations of documents. This was something that the committee hoped to work with the Secretary of State's office on during this next interim, recognizing the need for a more modern world and a more modern age to allow for remote online notarizations of documents. But as we all know, with the pandemic, we needed to move much faster. And so the Secretary of State's office took the leadership on this issue with the Corporations Committee and pulled together all the stakeholders and came up with this bill. And it is a uniform law on remote authorization, remote online notarizations, but there is some Wyoming finesse to it, and the committee did throughout the interim pare down some of those limitations that would be inconsistent with Wyoming law. But generally speaking, it is a uniform law, which is important for this country to have some consistency across the states regarding requirements associated with notarizations. So again, I think it's important to recognize that stakeholder participation came forward on this bill from attorneys, title companies, banks, real estate companies, all of those industries that really heavily rely on notarization as part of their primary method of business. So the purpose is to ensure that Wyoming law remains compliant with the Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, harmonizing that act with the treatment of notarizations of all records, whether on paper or electronic. So what it does do is the bill also provides those necessary safeguards to ensure the purpose why we have notaries, so that notaries are prohibited from acting on a transaction where there's a conflict of interest, where there can be a direct beneficial interest, requires a journal of notaries public so that there's a record of what is being notarized. It authorizes notarial acts under the authority of federally recognized Indian tribes, which is unique and I think an important update to our notarial laws as well. It allows the Secretary of State's office to deny those bonding requirements, those notaries who are authorized to serve as notaries in the state. So it gives them the authority to revoke, refuse, renew, or deny if they have information associated with a notary who should not be a notary in the state of Wyoming. Obviously allows the Secretary of State's office to promulgate further rules associated with this. It streamlines the commissioning process and the bonding process, decreases the processing time down to 60 days for immediate activation. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can.
All right.
Senator, you're doing well. Thank you.
Okay, great. The notary bond was eliminated, which was one of those Wyoming efforts that we made. Typically there was historically there was a requirement associated with notaries to have a bond to provide that kind of insurance associated with the acts that they do. The committee determined that there was no longer a need to have a bond and reduced that financial requirement associated with the office of a notary. That is pretty standard practice actually across the country. So it's not that particularly compelling, but it is what we chose to do. The fees, we increased the fee from $5 to $10 if a notary public wanted to assess a fee for that service. They don't have to assess any if they don't want to, but they are limited by what they can charge, which would be $10 for that act. There is also an ability for them to charge a technology associated with remote electronic authorization or notarization. So in the event using the type of technology involved, they can assess an additional fee associated with that technology. They're entitled, it expands the length of term that they have to be notaries from 6 years to 6 years. It also allows, which I think is important for the transaction of business in this state, for allowing notaries in the surrounding states to be able to notarize or be notaries in this state. So just because a person lives in Colorado perhaps, but they do business in Wyoming or are employed in Wyoming, they can become a Wyoming notary.
which I think is important. And there still is an exam required, and just as there always has been, to ensure that those obligations are met. The bill also goes into additional detail about the types of technologies associated with a remote online notarization, primarily ensuring that the technology ensures that the notary actually view the signature simultaneously, so it's actually really occurring live. So you can't sign something and get it notarized electronically later, just like you can't do now on paper documents. It does require the technology to serve as a simultaneous online notarization. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 29. It has been read in. Let me just get my technology there.
Thank you for remembering to move that Standing Committee amendment, Senator.
So good, Senators. As you look for questions to challenge me, and my only help here is that I've got lunch to protect me from the potential questions you could offer on a 74-page bill.
As you look for the amendment, Senator, I'm looking out across the Hollywood squares to see if anyone has any questions up to this point on notarial acts.
Thank you, Mr.
When you're ready, I'm going to go to Senator Perkins, then we'll come back to the amendment and your explanation thereof, Senator. Senator Perkins.
Thank you. Question on the bill, specifically, the bill requires in order for the notary have that it be done where you have to have simultaneous visual and audio confirmation at the signing. That's the way I understood the bill. How is that different from existing statute? It seemed to me that, and maybe I think we've adopted the Uniform Notary Act some time ago, but in Wyoming, we have, one of the things that happens particularly is that oftentimes we have clients that are either out of town, or we have small offices, and and I know a number of notaries, particularly lawyers and others, who at times have had clients sign documents. Those documents were returned to the attorney's office, and then a telephone call to confirm that indeed they signed and that was their signature, and then those were notarized, and then that would seem to be precluded under the existing statute. Is that correct?
Senator Nethercott.
Mr. Chairman, that's a great question. I think even under the current law that type of conduct would be generally prohibited. And so really the person who is signing the document should be signing live in the presence of the notary public. I think some common sense comes into play at times, or some proof later comes for ratification for real world scenarios. But I think the law requires, just as it does in this bill, that the notary observe the signature being signed on the document at the time. And so but now what the bill does is it doesn't require that individual to be literally standing in front of or in the same room as the individual signing the document, but rather can be somewhere else entirely, but together remotely as we are today.
Okay, so please continue, Senator, with the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
Follow-up, Senator Perkins.
I did have a follow-up. Thank you. Then I guess the other question I would have is that it seems that in some respects, this pushes notaries towards finding and dealing with notary, some kind of notary or certification software. And I was wondering if there was some discussion in the committee regarding that software and the costs and the other things that are associated with having, that moves us in this direction.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A great question about the associated technology. There are requirements associated in the bill for that technology, primarily associated with the ability to have it recorded and how that is to be stored. So there is proof of the actual lawful requirements being met for that online notarization. So certainly there are additional costs and fees, and the bill allows for a notary public, if they choose to provide the service of online notarization. This is not a requirement that they do. So those notaries who still just want to notarize in the traditional way that they always have can continue to do that, and they're not obligated to provide a remote online notarization. But if they choose to, they can. And if they do, they can also charge an additional fee associated with the cost for that technology usage. And again, there are requirements associated with the type of technology, no directive as to the specific type of software, but there is a great deal on the market that they can participate in, with just the requirements that it be allowed to record the information in a way that allows it to be reviewed later.
Senator Perkins, does that help? Any further follow-up on that? Thank you. Didn't mean to jump out ahead there, Senator Nethercott. I'm taking a look, and it looks like we can move on to the amendment now.
Don't forget about lunch, good senators. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will go back to the amendment. Good senators, again, we're on Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 29. You can see pretty directly the type of amendments that the committee made. They're pretty much cleanup amendments. So on page 9, line 15, after stamp, we inserted the word seal, just allowing for the recognition that it probably won't be considered a stamp anymore on the remote online notarizations, and rather probably the better term would be a seal. Pretty much the same thing, just an issue of semantics. Page 49, line 5, delete and retention, just a cleanup portion for that, page 49, line 5. On page 73, line 4, again, a technical change of striking notarial officer and inserting notary public. And on page 73, line 5, delete $50 and insert $60 for just that price change there. And for that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions on Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 29.
Any questions, senators, on the Standing Committee Amendment? There being none, all those in favor of Senator Nethercott's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 29, please raise your hand to the screen. Are there any opposed? Okay, that Standing Committee Amendment has passed. We are back on the bill. Senator Nethercott?
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Perkins first.
Thank you. I do have one more question about the bill, Mr. Chairman, and that is, I didn't see in the bill, but are there civil penalties for technical violations of notary publics or notarial officers who have technical violation? You know, maybe they don't have a journal entry, or maybe there's there's any number of ways you could have a technical violation of this statute. And I'm just wondering if there's any particular penalties or other things that are associated with that you discussed or are aware of regarding this change in statute.
Senator Nethercott?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. They were in the original version of the bill. They have been amended out by your good Committee number 7, finding that those were too burdensome for the notaries of this state. So there are no consequences for failure to comply with the law.
Senator Perkins, any follow-up? Okay, thank you. Senator Scott, I believe you've got a question.
Mr. Chairman, not a question. There is still a criminal statute in Title VI, and I forget exactly what it applies to. It doesn't cover everything, and it doesn't cover, I think, some of the minor technical things that are probably really more civil than criminal.
Okay, thank you for that, Senator. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few questions that have arisen since speaking with my county clerk. Will they be required to still file a hard copy? They had started eNotary during COVID and thought that that would be a temporary change, and they have seen some confusion with the public through that process. So how will that be addressed, or has it been? Let's see. should this turn from a may to a shall, there's concern that the office may no longer wish to provide notary services. And they also said the gerund should indicate if it is a remote notarization. So can you address whether those things are in the bill? And then also, I'm wondering how essential biometric data, including but not limited to facial recognition, voice analysis, or fingerprint analysis is to the bill. And as another senator pointed out, that could be a very costly endeavor to go down that road. I realize it's a voluntary thing at this time, but much of our society is going in that direction. So I find it a little concerning to think that our notary process is going that way. So if you could answer those few things, I would sure appreciate it.
Senator Nethercott, hopefully you got that list okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'll go in the order which they received. And I guess what I would also ask is if there's maybe potentially direct me to a specific page and line number on the may and the shells that creates the concern as you think about that. The hard copy from the clerk's office, I'm not sure exactly what they're referring to, but certainly if a notarized document needs to be filed in the county clerk's records, then yes, then they would need a hard copy. I don't believe that any of our county clerks' offices or courthouses in any way, shape, or form have the ability to do much, -1 in the northwest corner of the state, by electronic documents. And so we're still on the paper process. So just because something has been notarized electronically through remote online notarization doesn't mean that for something to be filed and recorded in the clerk's office that hard copy of that document would need to be present for that as well. There's no requirement under this bill or under other previous laws concerning notary publics for a notary to keep a copy of the document that they're notarizing. Certainly that's never been an obligation before, or if this bill were to pass after. So what it is really a journal entry, which is best practices now that for notaries really to protect themselves, to recognize who they're notarized, they identify in their journal book, John Doe appeared in front of them on March 25th, and he presented an ID. And so they knew that they were there, and they also referenced the type of document being notarized. That obligation still continues in this bill. And so I think that's important. The bill does not require notaries to use remote online notarizations. So again, it's something that they can avail themselves of for their customers, clients, whether it be a title company, selling, facilitating the transactions of business between global partners or out-of-state partners who aren't going to come here for a closing. They're still able to facilitate that type of business, but they're not obligated to do that. And the county clerks in this state, this bill doesn't address clerks' offices, it's just notaries in general. And so if they want to provide remote online notarization to their customers and to the public in their communities, certainly they can, but they're not required to do that. Concerning the reference to biometric data, I know that sounds really scary saying that in a bill, but I think really what it's doing is just acknowledging current technology. I know I have my cell phone here today, and the way that I access my phone, I can do it either through my fingerprint or through a code that I put in, and that's a choice that I have, but that would be considered biometric. Now, whether or not I find that frightening that my iPhone is familiar with my fingerprint, I don't know, or whether or not that our faces are being recorded and that our photographs can also be identified with other photographs. That's just the reality of the world we live in. And I don't think it is requiring, the giving of blood or DNA. It's just simply an understanding of the devices that we currently use within our daily lives, and allows for that technology to be used instead of prohibiting it. So just kind of opens the door rather than requiring anyone to walk through it. If a notary public wanted to use technology associated with two-factor authentication or some other type of assurances associated that the person appearing in front of them remotely is who they are, they certainly have the ability to do that, and they're not required to use biometrics, but if they choose to, they can. So it's permissive rather than restrictive.
Thank you, Senator Nethercott. Senator Steinmetz, does that help? Any follow-up?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the explanation. I think we'll visit a little more one-on-one, if that would be acceptable to the good chairwoman, and let everyone get to lunch.
Thank you. Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only, the only reference I saw with respect to recording um, electronic records containing a notarial certificate was on page 51, starting on line 21 and over the top of page 52. And it was permissive in that line 21. It says the recorder may accept for recording a tangible copy of electronic document. And there's a requirement for a certification there as well. But there was a question about specific citation in the bill. I was just offering that. So in case Senator Nethercott wanted to expand on that further. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Perkins. Much appreciated. Senators, other questions for Senator Nethercott? Okay, Senator Nethercott, final thoughts on this bill before we go to a question?
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would say that is something that the stakeholders in Wyoming, the business community and the citizens of Wyoming asked for to happen sooner rather than later. And that's the Secretary of State's office, who is charged with giving credentials to notaries public. They got on it and worked the bill pretty hard in the interim along with committee number 7. So I would say this isn't just a neat idea the committee came up with, that it really came out of authentic need from Wyoming citizens.
Thank you very much. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Driscoll's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a due pass recommendation on Senate File 29, please raise your hand to the camera. And please keep it up so that the chief clerk and I can get a good count.
Mr. Chairman, I see 25.
Thank you. Same. And those opposed to Senate File 29, please raise your hand.
One.
I see 1, Madam Chief Clerk. Okay, Senate File 29 has passed Committee of the Whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Committee of the Whole beg leave to rise and sit again.
Heard the motion. You've heard the motion. Go ahead.
Majority Floor Leader, you've heard the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Please raise your hand. Motion carries. Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Mr. Chairman. Motion's carried. Are there any announcements? Appropriations, you have an announcement? Oh, Senator Perkins, go ahead. Look past.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appropriations will be meeting at 10 minutes after adjournment to take re-referred bills. We're going to take all of them in the order, or we'll take all of them in numerical order. Any that we that we aren't able to finish over the noon recess, we will take up at adjournment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further announcements? Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. Just a quick question as to whether or not we will have to leave this address and come back in at 2 o'clock, or are we on this this meeting address for the rest of the day?
We've got staff on board. Could you give us an answer on that, one of you?
Mr. President, this is Anthony. This will be your Zoom invite for all 8 days. So we will keep the Zoom meeting running through the lunch hour, turn the YouTube stream off, turn it back on when you come back on. But this will be the link and the meeting that you use all week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further announcements? Senator Guru.
Just a technical question then, Mr. President, then those of us that have a breakout meeting with appropriations will get a little invite to go off there, I take it. Probably already in my inbox.
Anthony, is that true?
That is correct. That will be a separate invite.
Okay, I saw another hand. Vice President, did you have your hand up? No. Okay, any further announcements? Oh, Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm rapidly checking. I talked with LSO this morning trying to have that invitation out, and I'm not seeing that invitation yet. So, and if we could get, thank you.
Follow up, Senator Kinski.
Yeah, it's on it's on my calendar. It's on my legislative calendar already. It may not be in your inbox, but it's on the calendar.
Sounds like Appropriations has their marching orders. Further announcements?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Perkins, what time will we be starting?
Follow this closely, Majority Floor Leader.
10 minutes upon adjournment, 10 minutes after, 10 minutes after recess. So in 10 minutes.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader, what are you thinking for return time?
Let's go to 1:45. Does that work?
All right, don't see a lot of objection. All right, you've heard the motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, Senate will stand adjourned or recessed until 1:45 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy lunch. Except appropriations, you don't get to.